Okay, so what we are doing here is retipping the prongs on a ring. This ring has a sapphire stone in it, which is one of a couple of stones that can take heat directly to the stone. So I've put it in what's called my third hand tweezers, which are holding it in place here. I will take my solder snip tools, and for retipping prongs I like to use yellow medium solder. So I'm going to snip a few pieces of solder here, and you don't want to go too big with your solder snips when you're retipping a prong. It's better to do a little bit at a time than to do too much. Makes cleanup of the prong a lot easier to do. So I've got my few pieces of gold solder in 14 karat yellow medium, and I am going to put a mixture of denatured alcohol and boric acid on my ring, which keeps the gold from turning colors when we work on it. Also do a little bit of flux, which helps keeps the solder area clean from porosity. I will ignite my torch, which I use a mixture of propane and oxygen. Now, the level of heat that you will set your torch at varies depending on how thick the ring is you're working on, what kind of job you're doing. For retipping prongs, I'm going to use a flame about this hot here. So what I'll do is bead up a small piece of gold solder, heat up my ring here, and one at a time add the gold solder to the warm prong, and just enough for it to melt on there. Do it again on my next prong here, just enough for it to melt. Then I'm flipping the ring around 180 degrees. Okay, so the reason I flipped the ring around 180 degrees is so I'm working directly in front of the prongs that I'm working on instead of trying to retip them from the back side. You want your heat directly focused on what you are doing instead of trying to retip the prongs on the back side. Some people might want to say, well, doesn't that waste time? Can I just do it from here? Well, it takes 2 seconds to turn your ring around, and if you're sitting here with your torch trying to heat up the prongs on the back side, you'll also be heating up the prongs on the front side, which you just retipped, and that's not a good thing. You can melt the prongs that you just added to the ring. So again, going to do the same thing, use my solder pick and pick up a small amount of solder and add it to this prong here, just enough for it to melt. Grab another piece and do the same thing on the other side. Now, the adding of the gold, retipping of the prongs here are finished. What we have to do now is clean the chemicals, the boric acid and the flux off of the ring, and then actually clean up, sand, shape, and polish the ring prongs, and then polish everything. We cannot clean the chemicals off of it yet because this ring is pretty hot, probably somewhere around 1500 degrees, and if you are to take a stone that is that hot and quench it in any kind of liquid or a cleaner and cool it off too fast, you can actually damage the stone, discolor it, fracture it, or even break it in half. I've seen happen before. So you let it cool naturally, which just takes a minute or so, and then we'll take it to the cleaner and begin all of our cleanup process. Alright, So I couldn't really show you the cleaning process. It's nothing too special. I just dipped the ring in what's called a pickling pot. It's a pickling compound mixed with water, and then I steamed it and put it in my ultrasonic for a minute, and that got all of the chemicals, the flux and boric acid, off of the ring. So now what I'm going to do is take my handpiece of my flex shaft, which I have a sanding disc on there. Now, one thing with prongs is you want to make sure that you use a clean, fresh sanding disc and change it as often as you feel necessary. Because if you use one that is worn too much, you can actually cause pits to form in the prong work you did. It will actually pull little pieces of the solder out. So what I'm going to do is use my sanding disc on my flex shaft here and shape my prongs. Okay, I am changing my first disc. I feel that one's starting to wear already. Time for a new disc. Okay, now the actual technique of reshaping your prongs after you've retipped them isn't something I can explain in words or even show you. You kind of saw what I just did here, but not with any close detail. It's just something that you have to practice and get a feel for and feel comfortable with it. That's how I started off my apprenticeship. You basically just have to hop into it and give it a shot and go for it. So what I'm doing now is switching my sanding disc out for what's called a cup burr. And a cup burr is exactly what it sounds like. It's a burr that is a cup, very teeny tiny. On the inside it is serrated, so you can go in and round off the prongs that you just worked on. So I go one at a time, slowly. Use my cup burr to put a nice round finish on each prong. And there we have it. Now, last step is polishing. So what I like to do is use a small polishing wheel at my desk here and do an initial polish, and then go to my polishing room and hit it on the buffing wheel, which you will see in a minute. So first thing first here is I am going to polish with my wheel at my desk here. And if you saw off camera here, I have a little block of polishing compound. I grab a little bit, put it on my wheel, and then polish my piece here. Now you want to be careful and not polish too much or too hard, because you can actually polish away the gold of the ring, or you can polish away the gold solder that you just retipped your prongs with. So did a quick polish here at my desk. Next we'll go to the polishing room and give it its final polish from there. Okay, here is my polishing setup back here. I have an inside polisher, harder buffing wheel, and a softer buffing wheel. We'll give it a quick once over. Okay, now the ring itself is polished, and as you might have not saw, but I only use the soft polishing wheel on the actual prongs themselves. The rough buffing wheel will actually polish away your prongs down to nothing almost instantly. So you have to be very careful when polishing prongs on a buffing wheel like this. And last step is putting it in the ultrasonic and cleaning all this compound off of there. Well, there isn't much to see here, but I will take the ring and put it in my ultrasonic for just a minute or so. That's going to remove all the polishing compound from when we just buffed the ring. The agitation of the ultrasonic pulses doesn't take long to remove all that polishing compound. And in my ultrasonic, I have a special buffing compound remover diluted with water, so it does a very good job at cleaning rings, multi-purpose, besides just polishing them. This is what I use for cleaning everything basically. So now I will steam the ring off.